you all for joining. We're really excited to have you all here today for our presentation. So without further ado, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to A Young Vision for Future Connecticut Communities. This webinar is presented to you today by the Summer 2020 Fellows from Sustainable CT. Sustainable CT is a certification program in the state of Connecticut that provides municipalities with a menu of voluntary actions to continually become more sustainable and provides resources and tools to assist municipalities in implementing sustainability actions for the benefit of all residents. Each year, Sustainable CT brings on a new cohort of fellows who work through the regional councils of governments in the state to help towns in their pursuit of sustainability actions and certification. This year, the Sustainable CT Fellows worked together to research and compile this presentation for you, the leaders and change makers in our state, to show you what we envision for the future of Connecticut. Next slide, please. In this webinar, we will first present the results of a survey that we conducted to gauge what young people in Connecticut are looking for as the state and its towns make plans for the future. Next, we'll go into a series of topic areas that we as young people feel are important for the leaders of our state to consider when making policies and plans for the future. Lastly, we'll have some time for your questions. Now, here's our first presenter, Julian, who will speak about our survey and its results. Next slide, please.
Hey guys, good morning and thanks for coming. I'm just going to go over some quick analytics and responses of the survey that we conducted. So to give you a brief intro to it, we got around 31 respondents and it was out for about 2-3 weeks. So going down the list, we got 83 respondents of the people that did the survey were ages 18 to 24 to give us a frame for how the age group generally of this survey. Of those people, 86% of them felt there needed to be more done regarding equity within their communities. And a lot of them, over 70% of them, didn't really know what was going on in their own town, being in the know, in the loop. And 40% believed that their equity was rated as like an average rating, whereas over 40% believed their equity was either below average or poor. 83% believed that there were unchecked barriers for minority groups within their communities. And when they were prompted, what problems have you or someone close to you experienced within their town, a large percentage of them, over 40% of their answers related to racism. And that includes items such as racial profiling, racial language, and lack of representation. So just to frame us here, just really interesting analytics there. And next slide, please. And just some answers to the open-ended responses. When they were prompted, where do you think your town can improve? Most people discussed disproportionate funding or the lack thereof and energy surrounding poor individuals and poor communities. There's a huge emphasis on public amenities and education, especially on less police force funding and like moving those funds around in more productive ways. A lot of people talked about environments surrounding schools, for example, curriculum revamping, eliminating whitewashing, and to shed light on lesser known history that is really important and not talked about as much. And also police force presence at schools. A lot of people took umbrage with the idea that police are staying in a school learning zone and making the environment feel a little less safe. They also wanted to have affordable housing expanded seriously and talked about more, and also a fair distribution of town funds. And to bring up some examples of that are some poorly paved roads, school systems that get more money than others in different communities. And in turn with that, inclusion and diversity by more effective communication was a big response. And that goes back to the idea of people being in the know or in the loop of what's going on in their town. It can only be done insofar as much as they are included and diverse. So that's just some quick analytics there and survey responses to give us some frame for the rest of the presentation. And thank you guys for listening, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thank you, Julian. Now, before we dive into our topic areas today, we'd like for everyone to take a moment to imagine a young family, a mother, a father, and their little boy, Johnny. They're considering moving to Connecticut. They're looking to move back home after living away from the state for about 5 years, where they started their careers in starter jobs. In considering moving back to Connecticut, the parents, Peter and Maya, remember their upbringing as low-income Latinx individuals and they're hoping that some of the tough circumstances they faced as kids have changed since they left the state. When they were young, both Peter and Maya lived in affordable housing neighborhoods in southern Connecticut. They loved their home, but they always knew that life wasn't easy. Oftentimes, they saw their family budgeting between food, gas for an old car, paying bills, and getting enough school supplies to get them by in class. Grocery stores weren't always closed, and they remember waiting for the bus on rainy days and then spending multiple hours to get just the basic necessities. Bus lines weren't extensive, and the food markets were far away. Using a car to travel was the most practical default, but gas wasn't always affordable. They knew their school wasn't the best one around, especially compared to the better funded districts they saw. And beyond that, going to school was important, but so was taking on an after-school job to help their families. Furthermore, as Latinx individuals, they remember feeling left out or a lack of belonging and recognition in their community. Sometimes safety was a concern. Then there weren't many parks or playgrounds or other open spaces and natural areas to enjoy. Despite these trials and tribulations, though, both Peter and Maya, with the support of their families, their neighborhoods, some great teachers, and some really nice well-wishers, were able to do well and both got partial scholarships to UConn. There, they both earned degrees while taking on some student loans and went on to starter positions in Washington, D.C. Now, after getting married and having their first child, they're looking to settle down and grow their family. But COVID-19 has thrown a wrench in their plans. With both parents telecommuting and with no good daycare options around where they currently live, they're looking to come back home to Connecticut to have the support of their families through these tough times. As they start looking for houses, they're considering their path, and they're asking these questions. Will our child grow up in a culturally welcoming community? Will there be affordable housing options if we hit hard times? Will there be zoning problems if we want to build an accessory unit for our loved ones to live in and help us? It would be great if we had better public transportation options so we don't always have to rely on our cars. Will there be parks and playgrounds for our son? Will the school districts offer our son new opportunities for learning? What will the job market look like in 5 years? Hopefully, healthy local food markets will be nearby. It would also be great if Connecticut had greener, money-saving energy options and good public utilities so that we can save some money while we continue to pay off our student loans. It would be great to have a nice downtown area with things to do, places to see, and most of all, it would be great if we could have an affordable mortgage in a sustainable, inclusive neighborhood that offers our family new and exciting opportunities in the years to come. So what does this family need? They're looking for a dignified home that they can afford in a place that offers them economic and educational opportunity. They hope to feel welcomed as an ethnic family and want to be able to access public transportation and basic necessities. And they hope to find that in Connecticut. But Connecticut's not perfect, and COVID-19 has exposed many vulnerabilities in our system. As young people who are asking many of the same questions as Peter and Maya in this situation, we believe that towns in Connecticut stand in an excellent position to make the future of Connecticut more inclusive and sustainable. After working with towns across the state throughout the summer, and after surveying our peers, here is our compilation of ideas and potential policies for our town, our vision for future Connecticut communities. Next slide, please. Now we'll get into our topic areas. We've divided them into economic topics, social topics, and environmental topics. We'll start with the economic section. Next slide, please.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, Hamza. Good morning, everyone. As Hamza said, my name is Kellyanne, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about thriving local economies. So we all know that small businesses and local economies are an extremely important part of sustainability in any community. They are also a large part of what attracts people to live in towns. Whether a quaint center of town or vibrant and bustling downtown, business areas can be a place of pride for communities. It is also important for municipalities to build vibrant local economies and the infrastructure to support it. For each town, an economic center is going to look different. However, there are certain action points that are universal for all sizes of municipalities. As a young adult, I would love to live in an affordable place within walking distance of the necessities, like a grocery store or a bank, as well as restaurants, a coffee shop, a park, or shops. Therefore, it is important for all municipalities to increase their accessibility and walkability. This means more extensive sidewalks to connect major features of a town or city, and it also means increasing bike infrastructure with safer bike lanes and bike racks. It is also critical for municipalities to diversify the type of businesses in the town and encourage gathering in the center of town by having open spaces. Let's look at the two pictures on this slide as an example. Pratt Street in Hartford is a pedestrian-only street. There are a number of restaurants, a barbershop, a bar, and clothing stores. It is easy to imagine someone getting a haircut and meeting their friends for dinner later on that street. That's money going into the Hartford economy because there were a variety of businesses in one area. And before any of the small towns start to dismiss this because it seems like something that only a city or big towns could do, the bottom picture is Norfolk, a town in the Northwest Hills with a population of 1,700 people. Their center of town has shops, a restaurant, a big town green, and beautiful sidewalks where I spent a lovely few hours walking around, shopping, and eating dinner after meeting with the first selectman about sustainable CT. Aspects of both of these examples could be emulated by towns of any size to build a better economic center. Zoning issues may be touched on during the affordable housing section of this talk, but it is important to note that changes in zoning regulations will be required to build vibrant communities. Allowing for mixed-use buildings in economic centers is important for promoting business use and a community feel. In a large town and city, there are more transportation changes and redevelopments that can be done to support a thriving local economy. For example, there is the opportunity to renovate brownfields and old factories to house new industry or become affordable housing, or both. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the shift to online working, it is easy to imagine an old factory in New Haven or Bridgeport transformed into an office building that offers smaller spaces to companies who no longer need multiple levels of a high-rise for their in-office employees. In cities, there is also the potential to create more accessible transportation to expand the ability to get downtown. As someone who is looking to start their professional life, I don't want to own a car. That is a large extra expense that I really don't want to take on, and I don't think it should be that necessary. This is definitely influencing where I'm looking to move after I graduate from UConn. Growing up in a small town, I also know that small towns can have vibrant town centers and robust local economies. Having green space where people can gather is very important for promoting economic business in a center of town. Having a place to spend time promotes town pride and can encourage participation from citizens in town events because they feel more connected to where they live. It has also become more critical to ensure that your town is equipped with fiber optic cables or 5G towers to accommodate businesses as well as people who want to work from home. In summary, any town can build a vibrant economic center for their community. I hope that you all looked at these examples and suggestions as you continue to improve your towns. Next slide, please.
Hey everybody, my name is Matt and I'm going to talk about transportation and infrastructure today. So in improving the transportation system, it's obviously a very multifaceted issue. It involves things from housing to density to reducing carbon emissions and thinking about equity within the transportation conversation. One of the main things that us fellows think is the problem with transportation today, as Kellyanne just alluded to, is the fact that it is so car-centric. There's not enough accessibility for public transit. There is not enough bike infrastructure. There are not enough multimodal transportation options. So as fellows, we would like to see less of a dependency on cars and more on this multimodal transportation system. Interestingly enough, there were a couple examples from the pandemic that we thought were pretty eye-opening when it comes to multimodal transportation. One of the first ones is a free bus pilot program. So a lot of the buses right now in Connecticut, especially in Hartford, are free. And we would like to see a free bus pilot program where either towns or across Connecticut, there are options for free bus ridership, because we think this will not only improve public transportation, but also kind of give it an extra boost so that more people will get involved in public transportation and we can get more momentum to improve it altogether. Another thing is opening up streets to pedestrians. So Pratt Street pictured above, I think it's 2 days a week that they open their streets fully to pedestrians, and it's a really good way to improve open space, get more of a sense of a community, and get that sense of walkability and livability that we really want to see in our communities. Another thing that we focused on is telecommuting. A lot of people right now, of course, are telecommuting, and we will probably see more of that in the near future as well with these recent spikes And it's important that towns have the infrastructure and the fiber optic cables to think about this as a viable transportation, a form of transportation, because it can really reduce VMT within the state, and it can be a really good way to reduce carbon emissions. A couple other things regarding transportation that we would like to see is regarding the UPass, expanding UPass to essential workers and other workers in Connecticut. So for those who aren't familiar, UPass is it's a pass that college students have in order to ride transit for free. You can get on the bus, you can get on rail for free, and we would like to see it expanded to essential workers and other workers in Connecticut. Also improving the bike trail network in Connecticut and getting more bike parking, and having more open space and walkability. We can go to the next slide. So very connected to transportation, of course, is infrastructure. And there are three things with infrastructure that we would like to see. The first one being equity. Having more affordable housing and multifamily housing in these communities, we think is really essential, because we want to have affordable living, and we want to make sure that we can live in an area where we have all the opportunities when it comes to education, when it comes to having connections to the economy, and having local connections within our community. So we want to make sure that we have that equitable option, and making sure that option is available to anybody. On top of that, we want to focus on density too. One of the things that can really improve density within communities is having a reduced parking requirement, and Hartford has really been a leader for this. Another thing that really helps is allowing lots for less than 8,000 square feet. Connecticut really hasn't been a leader in having small lot sizes, and having these smaller lot sizes can improve the housing options within a community and make it more dense within urban areas. Another thing that we will focus on later, and I won't get into too much now, is having more urban agriculture. So having those local food systems and making sure that we have healthy and affordable food options right within our community. And lastly, going green, so making sure that we have stretch codes for buildings and having buildings that don't use up a lot of energy, and having recycling centers and getting rid of the incinerators and coal plants within our communities. So in short, we'd like to see more equitable, green, and dense infrastructure, focusing on more open space and more of a sense of community. And we can go to the next slide.
Now turning to the issue of housing accessibility and affordability. As many of you know, there is a housing crisis in Connecticut, like in the rest of the country. It is impacting our communities, and it's hurting Connecticut's economy and our long-term recovery from the recession. Our personal economics have changed along with institutional priorities over the last 50 years. The amount of money people are making today and the wealth they have has changed significantly. Between the Great Recession and the college debt crisis, significant progress has been lost in terms of educational achievement and long-term life achievement. Focusing specifically on the college debt issue and how it affects young people, and then also the dynamic it poses for older generations. Young people are currently graduating college between $26,000 and $32,000 in debt. And when this is coupled with the job market and the real wages recent graduates can be expected to earn, it is almost impossible to purchase or rent a house within the state of Connecticut unless graduates are turning to the already overburdened urban cores where development is concentrated, pollution, Black, Indigenous people of color, affordable housing, and a lack of reliable services that are public. This is hindering our community a number of ways. When young people are unable to buy into a community, the simple result is there's a change in the amount of income that the town is getting. This necessitates budgetary changes over an extremely short period of time, resulting in valuable cuts to services, which makes it even more inaccessible for young graduates to move into these communities. It's another thing to age out of your community and be unable to afford your community, even though you've lived there for decades. And that is due both to inaccessible housing options and the way our communities have become structured and representing homogeneous economic classes. Our development patterns and our zoning laws also coincided with this and promoted this type of development that has created extremely diverse and homogeneous communities based along economic and institutional lines. And we need to address this development by ensuring, like Matt and Kellyanne have both mentioned, that affordable housing is developed along with transportation infrastructure, as well as small businesses to create an actual sense of place in these communities. And this can be accomplished through 4 different pieces. When we do this, we want to build for all. So when we're doing this, we're providing access to diverse housing options, such as multifamily duplexes, apartment, accessory dwellings, etc. When we're building for all, we're trying to provide access to all different types of people in a community, because the community is both more resilient and more sustainable over the long term when there are diverse groups of people in those communities. And this looks like providing housing to young people. So you want to create a vibrant and walkable downtown and locating the housing close to public transit options. We want to provide housing for seniors as well. And this looks like access to community spaces, as well as locating them close to emergency services and ensuring single floor dwellings. So when we're experiencing having to put our parents in nursing homes or something, we can turn to accessory dwellings that have been passed in towns and municipalities and not have to make that choice. We also want to build for the character of the community. When we're doing this, we want an inclusive planning process that bridges the gap between people's conceptualization of affordable housing in terms of people thinking it's going to be cement apartment complexes and what their community actually resembles. So helping maintain that single family colonial architecture can be achieved through collaborative processes. And this also involves establishing certain types of development that are by right and through community approval. So we want to ensure the community is being consulted along this entire way and helping bridge that gap between communities that don't have affordable housing and how they conceive of it, and the communities where it's already concentrated. And building for character also means building for a standard of living that you want to exemplify in your municipality. Your affordable housing should be what you and your municipality are striving to be in the future. And this is inclusive communities as well as sustainable communities, and you want your affordable housing to reflect this. We also want to build for access, and this means creating a sense of place where people are having their accompanying development in terms of social and commercial institutions that support their life. People need access to transit and green space as well as food and clean water, but they also need access to institutions that support their social life. They need access to community spaces as well as food from their culture. They need churches and hairdressers that are the same type that they had access to where they were previously living, or else you're separating one of the main facets that promotes actual lifestyles and not just a building for someone to live in. And the last piece is building for sustainability. We want to understand and be able to build for the long-term changes that will be brought by climate change. And this means addressing development issues in terms of the materials used, as well as its contribution to other environmental issues, such as heat island effects and stormwater pollution. And these can be addressed through utilization of green infrastructure, LID practices, and greening developments. And again, this should all be done through an inclusive community process to bridge that gap between traditional status quo thinking and realizing that we have to move to a sustainable future, or that change is going to come without our opinion on it. And next slide, please.
So I'm not sure your mic is working.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So first we'll look in our social topics at cultural and ethnic diversity and education. As a woman of color who grew up in Connecticut, the daughter of immigrants, I didn't always feel like I belonged in my home state. As a student in public school, I was ostracized for my skin color. I've been teased for having parents that spoke English with an accent, and I've had teachers speak to me using cultural stereotypes. But despite these experiences, I do love Connecticut. It's the only place I've ever called home. And in the current climate of the country, Connecticut has a massive opportunity to speak up for its residents that may share and relate to my experiences. What can we do for them? We believe it's first important that our towns and communities have a clear understanding of topics like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and commit to establishing their values across the state. So what is diversity? Lumen Learning provides an excellent explanation and states that diversity includes, but is not limited to, language, religion, marital status, gender, age, socioeconomic status, geography, politics, and the list goes on and on. It also includes disabilities, Indigenous heritage, health statuses, and LGBTQ+ identity. Diversity is a massive topic to handle, but a simple way to think of it is that it's a collection of the many personal and cultural characteristics that make us unique and valuable individuals. So what then is equity? Equity is justice according to law and right. According to law and right, specifically regarding freedom from bias or favoritism. If we combine equity with diversity, it is important to consider whether our towns, intentionally or not, are instituting or perpetuating biases and favoritism towards certain groups. Do we leave people out if they can't speak English? Maybe people living in a geographic area are never able to access parts of their town or state. And that brings us to inclusion. How do we, as residents and leaders in Connecticut, ensure that the voices of all those we represent get equitable and fair access to the decision-making table? When we create policies, are we considering different angles and alternative explanations? In considering how to create a better Connecticut, we hope that the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion become pillars of planning and policymaking. You might be wondering if there are some concrete actions that towns can take to work towards more diverse and inclusive communities. Here are some of our thoughts. First, the area of education reform. We believe that the following investments in our school system would vastly improve the experiences of all students. First, providing teachers access to attend trainings that help them develop strategies to equitably work with students and families from diverse backgrounds, especially those that might not look like them. Encouraging schools to promote ethnic and cultural awareness days, and providing school resources to support student experiences with respect to diversity and feelings of school belonging. Third, reforming school curricula to teach accurate, reflective American and world history. Now, more than ever, an undertaught, unpalatable American history is coming to light, and it's one that we have to reckon with. It might be uncomfortable, but supporting curricula that prepare students to grapple with our systemic societal problems and biases and equip them to contribute to solutions will be essential to sustaining our society and its progress. The second area of policies that we think would be great is creating diversity and inclusion committees for town governments. Creating town committees on diversity, equity, and inclusion are a great way to engage residents and local experts on policy and programs in your town to ensure that new ideas are developed with many perspectives in mind. Members of a council could include local language and cultural organization leaders, religious leaders, professors and academic experts, activists and organizers, and even students and youth. Bristol, Connecticut is a great example of a town that has created a diversity council that is still meeting throughout COVID restrictions. And lastly, inclusive and welcoming town services. Establishing a town environment that encourages and allows formal recognition and events or permits for special holidays that represent various diverse groups would create a sense of trust in the community and make sure that diverse voices are heard. These could include Puerto Rican parades, Pride Month events, and even religious holidays. And lastly, creating inclusive and anti-racing zoning processes for communities and religious centers, such as churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples, as well as establishing disability access systems and community respect would create greater cooperation between all of the diverse communities that Connecticut represents. This is a start, but we hope that this provides some ideas for all that Connecticut towns can do to achieve a more diverse and inclusive community that champions respect and equity for all. With that, I'll pass the presentation on to Jo Neal, who will be speaking about food justice and access. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Hamza. And as she said, I'm Janelle, so I'm going to be talking about food access. So currently, access to sufficient nutritious food is inequitable in Connecticut. The 2018 Data Haven Community Wellbeing Survey reported that of the total respondents that did not have enough money to buy food, 28% reported not being able to do so almost every month. Although this is the case, retail food sales in Connecticut are the second highest in New England. So to find out why, we took a deeper look into school food systems, agricultural practices and patterns, as well as business resilience and local government systems throughout the state. Combined, all of these make up the foodscape and will allow us to determine what is working, as well as which areas need improvement as we strive towards a future that will ensure equitable food access for all. We found that schools and institutions that participate in the USDA's school nutrition programs are required to develop school wellness policies that promote the health of students and addresses the growing problem of childhood obesity, but the responsibility of these wellness policies is at the local level. Although this was to allow each school district and institution to address their specific needs, the implementation of these policies was not gauged. This leaves the state of Connecticut in a position where wealthier school districts have weaker policies and stronger policies are found in places like the New Haven public schools, where 40% of students are below the poverty line. We believe that stronger and more uniform implementation of school wellness policies across the state will lead to increased food security for children who may not have access to balanced meals at home, as well as increased interest in healthy eating habits that will ensure a healthier future of Connecticut. We also believe that local government and community resources can play an immensely supportive role in establishing sustainable and forward-thinking food system justice. A great place to start is by forming a food policy council. At the local government level, the City of New Haven has done an excellent job of creating such a council by holding regular meetings that engage with soup kitchens, food pantries, urban farms, local schools, municipal employees, city nonprofits, and residents to develop ideas for holistic food system justice work throughout the city. Beyond the local level, it's incredible to see that the state of Connecticut also has a food policy council itself. However, its initiatives tend to be more Hartford-focused and can miss perspectives from other parts of the state. We believe that engaging local food efforts on the state level can create a more complete approach to understanding food access issues and how to address them. One area where this is particularly important is in the area of food waste, which is becoming an increasing important environmental problem. States like Vermont have now banned all food waste and mandate composting. This would be a huge undertaking in Connecticut, but by coordinating efforts between regional food waste managers like the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority and town public works offices, we can create local government systems that invest in and truly create more sustainable food systems. With more than 436,000 acres of land dedicated to farming across the state, agriculture has a significant impact on not only the environment in Connecticut, but also the economy. Despite this fact, in the western region of Connecticut, only 6% of the food consumed is produced locally. This is fundamentally unsustainable. There are large-scale support systems for agricultural practices such as the Connecticut Division of the Farm Service Agency. Programs like these offer farmers assistance through loans and other services, and although these are useful for beginner farmers, they're less helpful towards established farming businesses. In addition to smaller support systems, ones that specifically provide assistance to sustainable farms could make strides in the journey towards increased sustainable farming practices. The Northeast Organic Farming Association provides a great example of this. Another simple action that could make a large impact is encouraging buying local. Currently, there are programs like CSAs in the rural parts of Connecticut that allow people to do this, but state-produced goods in urban areas are far less accessible. Overall, increased support of urban agriculture goes a long way in justice for communities living in food deserts and reducing racial and class disparities in access to healthy foods. By improving zoning regulations to allow for more extensive greenhouse farming, urban farm plots, and by engaging with schools and community centers to allow permits for farmers markets and farm-to-family program expansion, the state can truly benefit from its own local agriculture and also decrease its long-term resilience on environmentally costly transportation food storage systems. On the topic of long-term resilience, COVID-19 has exposed the difficulties and fragilities that exist in the restaurant and commercial food economies. As local restaurants continue to try to pick up the pieces after closures brought on by the coronavirus, much of the state's food business vitality is still up in the air. So by now you might be asking, what do young people hope to see their leaders and officials do about this? We hope that sound science informs reopening procedures, but we also hope that programs like the Payroll Protection Program and similar statewide efforts can be put into place. Buy local campaigns can further promote our neighbors' businesses and help them recuperate after such significant losses. Beyond small local businesses, food price gouging and supply chain vulnerability have become huge issues. We hope that the state and its municipalities invest time and energy into studying Connecticut's supply chains and look to ways to secure them in the future. Moreover, putting in place price limits and other assistance programs that ensure access to healthy, fresh food will be instrumental in guaranteeing future food in Connecticut. None of the interventions are easy or costless, but they will help to keep all Connecticut residents healthy and well-fed for the future, which we believe is worth the investment.
Future communities should also aim to protect people from environmental issues, and the concept of environmental justice helps to connect these environmental issues to social issues. Environmental justice refers to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to environmental laws, regulations, policies, and sites in a community. This movement has two aspects I want to focus on that helps to understand environmental justice: distributive justice and participative justice. Distributive justice refers to the equal distribution of environmental benefits and burdens, regardless of race, income, nationality, etc., in a community. In a thriving community, lawmakers and decision makers should aim to protect all citizens equally in respect to environmental issues or burdens. All residents should have access to environmental benefits such as open space and environmental education, but also the protection from environmental burdens such as air pollution, water pollution, toxic or hazardous waste, garbage dumping, and nuclear testing. The second aspect I want to focus on in environmental justice is participative justice, which refers to the participation of all affected communities in the planning process of environmental issues or impacts. The decision-making process should not exclude any groups that will be affected by such environmental sites or policies. These affected groups should have standing in the process and be able to voice their opinion before the actual implementation of sites, policies, etc. Communities can meet with the potential affected community members prior to this implementation so they can voice their opinions or concerns. In Connecticut, cities such as Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven, Stamford, and Waterbury have high sources of pollution that is paired with high minority and low-income individuals. It is important that we protect these cities as people are disproportionately affected in terms of environmental issues. These 5 cities alone have, according to Connecticut's Deep website and data, accounts for 19% of the state's pollution, 20% of potential pollution sources, and 51% of the state's pollution and poverty, and 71% of the state's minority population. Although it is crucial to protect these members in these cities, environmental justice can be present everywhere in every town in Connecticut. For these reasons, all thriving communities should embody community planning with environmental justice integrity. It is crucial to assess how one environmental site or policy may affect different groups in a community. Extensive data and research from multiple resources is vastly important to ensure groups are not experiencing more environmental burdens than their higher income and non-minority counterparts. If communities have been affected or burdened, efforts to help these communities must be taken. Apologies, acknowledgement, and ownership of mistakes must be taken by those responsible. And compensation help must be provided to anyone affected by the incident. Environmental justice is a new yet important topic in thriving communities and should be recognized in future Connecticut towns and cities. Thank you. Next slide.
So the next area that we'd like to touch upon as an emphasis for communities moving into the future is open spaces. So at the most basic level, open spaces are just publicly accessible, undeveloped land, which have many uses, ranging from being centers of conservation in sustainable areas to providing both physical and mental boost to residents enjoying the area. COVID has really helped to show the value that these places have in our communities, as a resurgence of the demand for these spots, even though it's a global pandemic and everyone's telecommuting, really shows how much value the community has for these spaces. Today, I'd like to look specifically into the types of open spaces that we've classified here as green spaces, as these are all practices that municipalities can adopt and work towards. First, I'd like to talk about community and pollinator gardens. These are increasing all around Connecticut, and it's great to see the number of towns that have adopted these and have worked in them. Throughout the summer, I've gone to work with many towns, and it's fun to see the way that they've been implemented. Community gardens can help to aid the town through not just as an outlet for people to be outside and work with each other, but they also serve as a way to mitigate food insecurity, as residents have the ability to grow and obtain fresh fruits and vegetables much easier. The pollinator gardens here also play a major role in the community's natural ecosystem. By providing both a home for bees and other pollinator species like butterflies, the community is able to decrease the decline in the populations, and the local natural environment will blossom from the increased amount of pollinators. Adoption of these will help the communities to grow together, and they certainly should be a focus for the future. I've discussed parks earlier, but they remain incredibly important. Having open parks offers a place to meet others, relax, and enjoy various physical activities. Studies have shown that exposure to nature through parks or other spaces has a tremendous boost on mental health and productivity. The things you can do in a park are limitless, and they're a resource to be protected. As we move into the future, the amount of undeveloped space is relatively finite, while the amount of people looking to develop is only going to increase. That's why we're recommending making sure the space that you already have is protected, ensuring that you're able to attain and protect future spaces, as this is something each generation will both want and need. The final thing that I'd like to touch upon are 2 low-impact development practices that can help to create more green space in your municipality. The first is living shorelines. This is a little bit more relevant for coastal towns, but these involve redeveloping parts of the shoreline that are suffering from heavy erosion with planting natural vegetation and using low-impact stabilization procedures to redevelop the shoreline. These techniques allow for carbon reduction, erosion resistance, and for the native species to return to the area, as they're simulating a natural shoreline. The other concept that I'd like to mention is the green roof, and it's a concept you're often going to see in urban environments, but it can be applied anywhere. The basics of this is planting certain types of hardy plants over the roofing materials, so you have a layer of soil and then plants on top of that. So that'll help to absorb the rain and the sunlight, and it provides another habitat for local species in helping to absorb rainwater. These roofs help to prevent water runoff with unwanted chemicals, and they also serve as a home for the local plants. I hope that you take these strategies into account when you're planning for the future in your next couple town meetings. Thank you. Next slide.
Turning now to the issue of climate change and climate resilience. The issue of climate change has not been given the agency that it deserves, and solutions are consistently moderated by what is politically and economically acceptable instead of what the science mandates. When we do not follow the science, we inevitably pay over the long term and externalize costs and consequences on the environment. Climate change predictions for the state of Connecticut are telling us that we will experience significantly higher and heavier rain events and precipitation overall, creating extreme stresses on our already overburdened stormwater infrastructure and affecting significantly our aquatic systems. The ways we can address this, as well as the issue of sea level rise, is by setting aside land and area to explicitly protect our river and aquatic environments. We can do this by ensuring that there is at least 100 feet of tree cover between a river and the closest development. It both helps improve water quality as well as helps reduce erosion, which, as many of us saw with Superstorm Sandy in 2012, significant amount of erosion were discharged into Long Island Sound, which hinders the ability of aquatic communities to function and provide the ecosystem services we rely on. In addition, we're going to see increasing flooding associated with sea level rise. This is already happening as tons of houses along the shore were destroyed, and our development along the shoreline now resembles stilts and elevated homes to protect from that. And that should tell us something, that we're planning to work with the water instead of understanding that the ocean is going to continue rising. And this leads into the idea of managed retreat. Above all the other options to deal with sea level rise, managed retreat is the most feasible economically as well as socially to address community concerns and the economic fallout that will be associated when super events take out many homes along the shoreline, which often make up a significant portion of municipal budgets. From an economic standpoint, this saves money in the long term by easing the burden on the flood insurance program and the cost associated with rebuilding entire communities and infrastructure associated with that. Managed retreat specifically allows for natural barriers, an area to be set aside to allow the water during superstorm events to move into. This also will promote and allow for the migration of wetlands and marshlands, which are becoming increasingly inundated due to sea level rise and are also being killed off due to salt water moving into freshwater environments. And these types of natural barriers provide significant benefits to us by disrupting the amount of energy that is involved in superstorm events and the storm surge that often is associated with the high levels of flooding we see. And by dissipating that energy, you're promoting actual resiliency and adaptive capacity within your community instead of putting homes up on top of stilts and hoping that they aren't knocked down during extreme events. And in addition to this, we have to ensure that community character remains the same. It is impossible to ensure community members are able to reside in their homes when their homes have been washed away due to a superstorm event. But we can plan to address and ensure that community members are allowed to stay by planning for their relocation within the community over the long term. Many communities have very small barrier islands as well as small communities that reside right along the shore, and many of those people have lived there for generations and have owned those homes for generations. It is paramount to ensure both their safety as well as their ability to remain in their community. And by not addressing the constant issue that sea level rise brings, we will not be able to address that issue. And this also now takes the turn to the issue about our supply chains and our long-term resiliency. About 80% of the food that's consumed within Connecticut comes from out of state, which means that when supply chains are disrupted, whether due to extreme weather events, droughts that affect crop rotations, or COVID, like is happening today, we are seeing that industries are not as resilient as we thought they initially were, and they've been streamlined to promote efficiency rather than long-term functioning. So when these disruptions occur, we are not able to have access to the basic necessities and supplies we need, like with the meatpacking industry. By localizing our food production through many of the initiatives that Jonil mentioned before, through the promotion, partnership, and subsidization of farmers and agricultural communities, and understanding the diversity between urban agriculture and rural communities, you can help to promote a system in which people are able to localize their impact and reduce their long-term impact on the planet. As well, we want to promote the use of microgrids and rooftop solar. The promotion of rooftop solar helps address concerns between municipal officials as well as the agricultural community over the siting of solar installations. And on top of this, it also helps promote our long-term resiliency. As many of you know, electricity was wiped out across many parts of the state due to a severe storm, and many people have been without power for over 24 hours at this point. With access to rooftop solar as well as community microgrids, communities are able to take themselves off of the main grid and utilize one that is promoted through the access that their neighbors each have to rooftop solar and can at least provide access to electricity for a few hours. However, using community solar and microgrids needs to be addressed as a political priority in the state because our current energy system and the way major utilities operate does not allow this to happen because it impacts their ability to control and maintain control over the energy market in the state. And the final and most paramount piece of this is planning for a future with strong consideration of climate change impacts. As many people know, the floodplain maps that we are currently utilizing for our development patterns are not up to date with even the UN predictions for climate change, which are already out of date with the current rate of warming and sea level rise that is being predicted by specialists in the field. We need to ensure that the way we are moving forward and understanding the way we need to move forward is with a significant consideration and understanding that science is what should be leading these decisions, because one way or the other, over the long term, we will be paying for the externalities and byproducts that are created by us not planning for these. Next slide, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emily, and following Chad's points we discussed in the previous slide, I'm also re-emphasizing how we can bring these siloed topics together through climate change solutions. As reiterated, Connecticut will see more extreme heat waves as well as an increase in flooding from downpours and sea level rise due to climate change. One study actually lists Norwich, Connecticut as one of the fastest warming cities in the US. Next slide, please. And as climate change heats the oceans, also as reiterated by Chad, we will see more hurricanes and tropical storms. In the past, we have seen this with Hurricane Sandy and Irene, which caused massive destruction in our state and exposed many vulnerabilities. This presentation also cannot be more timely as we just faced a tropical storm on Tuesday, one that put more than 700,000 people without power. Next slide, please. These natural disasters are not just isolated events. They affect the social, environmental, and economic well-being of our state and communities. While a pandemic is a once-in-a-lifetime event, climate change-related disasters expose the same vulnerabilities. Events like hurricanes, for example, prevent access to basic necessities like food and shelter, affect jobs, and encourage economic downfall, and reduce access to transportation. These effects are disproportionate to lower income communities of color. Let's consider Peter and Maya's family now through the lens of a climate change disaster. Peter and Maya's middle-class family, now faced with a tropical storm, will not be able to work due to lack of power, especially if they're telecommuting due to COVID. They lack access to healthcare, food, and water, and they feel socially isolated by the community because they are having a more difficult experience than the residents who have access to generators and resources to solve the damage. Even if they have reasonable incomes, this also puts a large strain on their paychecks and overall well-being and mental health. As young people graduating with student loans, we do not want to live in a place where these insecurities are a norm. Next slide, please. We are at a point that we must adapt to climate change rather than solely mitigating. Uniting around decreasing our vulnerabilities to climate change thus requires all of the changes listed before, such as improving infrastructure and transportation, increasing affordable housing, and localizing food sources and economies. Most importantly, diversity, equity, and inclusion must be at the forefront of these solutions. Vice versa, in order to adequately solve climate change, we must address all of our vulnerabilities and inequitable practices across the state. If we have these support networks in place, we will also create a thriving economy, a healthy environment, and a state people are excited and proud to call home. We must embrace the changes that need to come and recognize the benefit that they will have for Connecticut's unique communities. Next slide, please. The topics we covered in this presentation outline the importance of focusing on economic, social, and environmental change that we as young college students see as making Connecticut live up to its great potential. We all love this state and are committed to helping it in any way we can. So now we're going to leave time for some questions. I'm going to paste the topics we covered in the chat box, and following, please write your questions there as well. Thank you. Okay. So when you're ready, just feel free to type your questions in the chat box. So the first question is, are there certain Connecticut communities who are leading the way in these initiatives?
I think every community has their own diverse aspects that make them ideal places to move to. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts about Connecticut is every town seems to do something very well that another town may not be as good at, which kind of emphasizes our need to work collaboratively to address a lot of these issues. But I think it's looking internally, we all have our own conceptualization of our community and what it means to be that community. And I think we can look at some of them in terms of how they promote sustainability and realizing if you promote sustainability in the way I think Sustainable CT does, people are going to be looking to your community to go there and move there. And I think many of you that are registered with Sustainable CT are already trying to move on that track. And that should be a signal that there are at least the thought there that you want to address sustainability and make your community a better place.
The next question is, what types of businesses that you would like to, what types of businesses would you like to see grow in Connecticut? Yeah.
I think there are a variety of different businesses that have the potential to grow in Connecticut. Obviously, if you're, looking at it from just a purely economic standpoint, a lot of different industries would be great to bring in. So any, solar companies or wind companies that could bring that infrastructure as well as business to Connecticut would be, in my opinion, great to see grow. But just as someone who is looking to, move out of my parents' house and move to my own place, it would be really great to live in an area that promotes more art and culture rather than just restaurants and bars. And I think that could be taken a number of different ways and depends on what your overall community is looking for. If you're in a community where there's a lot of young people, perhaps having a place where music could be performed or art could be displayed, or public art. So in parks, having sculpture gardens. I think there's a variety of different ways it could be taken, but definitely just businesses that promote gathering, which I guess is bad right now in the pandemic, but hopefully when we move past this, just places that promote gathering and a community feel would be good businesses to grow.
If I could quickly add on to that, I think even beyond just like individual types of businesses, the types of values that businesses have in the state growing and developing would be really incredible as well. I know personally, if I saw multiple new small businesses opened up that valued, green energy connections for their buildings and their facilities, that, valued diverse hiring practices, that offered opportunities to young people for internships and other types of learning opportunities, maybe provided jobs for a variety of different people, building new businesses that value those kinds of things that can help the state grow more than just economically, but also environmentally and socially. I think those kinds of businesses are things that I would really love to see grow as well.
All right, and the next question is, other than Sustainable CT, what green building or development certifications options are there to communities to be more sustainable?
I guess I'll take that one since I did green buildings. I'm not sure about certification programs, but one of the things that I mentioned really quick is stretch codes, where a lot of people are advocating for legislation right now that reduces the amount of energy that buildings are using, and the Connecticut Green Building Council is really leading the way in that regard. So I think just having buildings that are ideally zero net energy would be, ideal, of course, but kind of just reducing the amount of energy in each building would be a step forward in whatever way it takes. And as I said, the Connecticut Green Building Council is really kind of leading the initiative in advocating for stretch codes.
To build on to that as well, there's also, I believe, Energize CT, which is something that Sustainable CT partners with for some of the actions, just that helps track and benchmark energy use in buildings in town. So that's another certification program, I think, or at least you get badges for however well you do in reducing your energy use. And then also just for buildings, I know there's the LEED certification buildings. That's a national organization where you can get your building certified as like LEED, silver, platinum.
And the next question, or Jess, do we have time? Like what's the limit on time?
So I'd say if people still have questions and want to stay on the line and you're all available, let's do it. Maybe we'll go till 12:10 or so. So get your questions in now for folks who are thinking of them. But thank you. This is great. Keep those questions coming.
All right. So the next question is there a group of people that you believe should be leading the charge for sustainability? Elected officials, planners, state or town departments, residents, or grassroots organizations?
I think we keep going back to the idea that it should be a collaborative process. And if I could offer like a quick model of something to the degree that it's very community centric, no one's dominating the meeting or specifically leading the meeting, I would say they should be almost facilitated by a third party to really create an inclusive and diverse team, because we can't just look in towards our municipalities to understand the kind of team we want to build, because often some of the people we need to understand diverse perspectives are not in our communities. So I wouldn't say we can necessarily limit it to certain people. I think it would be better to say whatever team you build should be reflective of the goal you're trying to achieve. So whoever you're trying to bring into your community or what you're trying to do to your community and who you're trying to involve should be who your team is made up of.
Yeah, on top of that, I agree. I think it needs to be a collaborative process, and that kind of brings in the idea of equity into that process, because you really need all stakeholders of the town, including just, regular community members, and making sure that you're reaching out to those diverse sets of populations to get, answers and make the solutions that you need to make, because otherwise it's just not representing the community as a whole.
Just to answer, I saw Elizabeth Shapiro had to put a question in the chat about if this is going to be compiled into something, and we are, as well as are planning on compiling all of our presentations that we gave today into a short document that will be able to be sent out. So you'll be able to reference this in the future.
I think we had a question if we could comment on how we can promote local farm products.
I can jump in really quickly here. And in terms of promoting local farms and local food systems, there are some great model cities. I know there was a question earlier about some model cities and what people do to promote agriculture. Throughout the summer, we've actually seen a couple of towns that do a great job of promoting farmers markets and opening access to farmers markets for local agriculture professionals. One of those towns is Monroe, Connecticut, in southwestern Connecticut. They have a significant amount of signage all over their town promoting local farms and local agriculture and inviting farmers to their farmers market. And they also provide a part of, I think, a municipal field to host that farmers market. And so that's a place where we've seen, city support of local agriculture in a way that engages residents, which goes back to that multifaceted approach to engaging people on, different initiatives. Another great town that we've seen is Sherman, Connecticut, also rather rural and really small, but their first selectman is really, has really embraced the idea of what it means to promote agriculture and making sure that local affordability doesn't become a barrier to promoting local agriculture. So oftentimes, buying from the local farmers market can be more expensive than a grocery store. And he's someone, the first selectman of Sherman, is really looking to what kind of barriers exist in those pricing systems and how they impact access to local agriculture. And so we've seen, residents really take to that, and we have a really personable relationship with him if they're farmers, and they really get that sense of support from the town. They see that residents want to buy from them, and then they see that people recognize their issues when it comes to pricing and access. So that's just a couple examples of towns that are doing what they can to promote the local agriculture and the farmers that live within their cities and towns.
I'll also give a quick shout out to New Britain. They have done a lot of work with a community group called New Britain Roots in their city, and they also just started a food policy council in the past year, which is very exciting. But they do a lot of work with bringing community gardens and agricultural programs to their schools and their senior center, as well as having farmers markets and a mobile farmers market so they can drive to different parts of the city and get people access to healthy foods. So definitely check out what New Britain has done if you're interested in seeing just how a city has brought more agriculture and local foods into their city.
I also think it's a really good idea of organizing the community through promotional events. Like I know where I'm from, Mansfield, we have an initiative called Taste of Mansfield, where we promote farms and retail outlets where you can buy local food at these restaurants or farmers markets or events. And it just is a really great way to bring the community together around food. All right, with that, I think we're running out of time, and so we're gonna wrap it up. But we would all like to thank you for joining us and listening to our points. I know we really enjoyed working on this project, and we're excited to see what Connecticut's gonna do in the future. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.